I know that there's certain things that are just not worth the effort, but then there are other recipes that are totally worth the effort. My job is creating raw food recipes, but I spend very little time in the kitchen. But that's not because I don't care about it. It's just that I focus on recipes that I know are quick and delicious. So I have like a 5-minute spaghetti sauce recipe that's basically in the food processor. It's tomatoes and some spices and some walnuts. There's a few other things, but it's very simple. And you pulse it, and it's like a really meaty, delicious, tomatoey spaghetti sauce. So I think you start to have these good recipes in your arsenal that you can just make really quick meals out of, and then you're kind of in a groove. But at the beginning, you just don't have those yet, so it is more time-consuming.
The Vidal Speaks podcast.
Episode 74, Laura Jane Coors. Raw vegan food, simple, fast, and delicious. Welcome to Vidal Speaks. My name is Deborah Vidal, former 11-year LPGA golf pro turned classical homeopath, certified plant-based nutritionist, and wellness coach. Each week here on Vidal Speaks, we bring you knowledge, inspiration, or natural remedies to help you take charge of your health and feel your best. I believe health is freedom and knowledge is power, so tuning in each week will give you the power to take steps towards freeing yourself from the chains that hold you back from having the energy to do all you want in life. No matter where you are in your journey of wellness, Vidal Speaks can help. I promise. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Vidal Speaks podcast. I'm Deborah Vidal, your host, also known as Vidal, and I feel so honored to be with you every week. My goals of this show are to teach you everything I know and to learn with you about subjects or topics that can help us all. After 20 years of a clinical practice and many injuries and health issues that I needed to heal in myself, my family, friends, and pets, not to mention that I've always been called the queen of research for my love to understand everything I can. Anyway, I now feel it's my time to give all I learned back. And it makes me feel good to do this because so many out there are so sick, especially with these undiagnosed syndromes, chronic diseases, or cancer. And we all need to learn why treatment for these in the medical world often fails. It's a dead-end road to think that pharmaceuticals will heal you. My job as a homeopath is always to treat the root cause, and prescribing or taking a drug is only suppressing symptoms, which has done nothing to address the why we got the disease to begin with. If we don't treat the cause and the whole person, then we're not healing and we're just suppressing or managing symptoms, which ends up in a bigger disaster, believe me. And for those of you that have been with me from the start, you know the way I describe suppression of symptoms is by comparing it to a pressure cooker. Your body wants to be in homeostasis, which just means balance. And when it gets out of whack or stress, it throws a symptom out on your physical body because it can't keep the balance anymore unless it does this. If you suppress that symptom or you remove it, it just means you're trying to push it back inside. And as soon as the pressure in our pressure cooker's rising, and after doing that sometimes only once for some people, other people it takes few times of doing this, sometimes many. But as soon as you push it inside too many times, that just makes the situation more of a crisis and something deeper happens. And the only way to really heal is to treat the why behind any disease. The single biggest thing you can do is to eat a clean, whole foods, plant-based diet. If you can't go 100%, which is the biggest insurance you can do, then just eat as much plant-based as possible. You know, I always say start simple and start easy. Just do 1 day a week, then move it to 3 days a week, and keep going until you think you're ready to try 30 days of a vegan or plant-based diet. Once you do that, you're going to see how much better you feel and it'll be hard to go back. But what holds a lot of people back is they try to change too fast and they don't know any recipes to make. So when you go slowly, you just give yourself time to learn some simple, easy recipes. And speaking of simple, I have a guest today who is the queen of simple, fast, and delicious. Her name is Laura Jane Coors. She's a raw foodie, and she says if she can do it, anyone can, because she lived on junk food, and even now as a raw foodie, she still loves her sweets. Imagine that, from a junk foodie to a raw foodie. That's impressive. And in addition to that, Laura Jane said she never liked to cook. So her goal is to help others make things that are simple, fast, and delicious. And she's done just that. You'll love this episode today because you're going to get to hear her speak about how to make going vegan or raw simple and easy. She's got a great website, you guys, with lots of recipes, so you got to be sure to check it out. And she has her own podcast, which I've listened to since she started. You'll also learn from her that it's possible to eat raw and not spend 4 days dehydrating and soaking. Hey, have you guys ever had a raw dessert? They're the best. And since she loves desserts, you can only imagine how many great recipes she's invented and has on her site, so be sure to try some of those right away. Raw desserts are often what can get people into the healthy vegan lifestyle, believe it or not. Why is that? Well, it's because people love desserts, and when they taste a raw dessert, they can't believe that it's something that's so much healthier than what they were eating. So if you can begin by replacing your old junky dessert that's filled with garbage that you were hooked on to a new raw food dessert that's simple, fast, and delicious, well, guess what? You're going to go, man, this is delicious, and I feel better. And then from the raw desserts, you go to adding a little more raw in your lifestyle. Just maybe it's more salads, maybe it's more veggies, and maybe it's not all raw and it's just vegan. But as you feel better, you always want to do more. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit more about Laura Jane, and then we'll go talk to her because I'm really excited for you guys to meet her. Laura Jane, the Rawtarian, is a leading creator of simple, satisfying raw vegan recipes. She is the author of her new book, Cook Lively, the host of the Raw Food Podcast, and a featured speaker at Blog Her Food in Miami, Florida, and the Canadian Food Bloggers Conference in Vancouver, BC. Her recipes and photography have been featured in the Huffington Post, the National Post, and Vegan Life magazine. She lives in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada, and she shares 100+ free, simple, satiating raw food recipes at her website, which is www, or we don't need to say that anymore, right? But it's therawtarian.com. Okay, I don't want to keep you waiting any longer, so let's go meet Laura Jane. Sit back and enjoy this one. This one's fun and easy, and you'll learn some delicious recipes. Here we go. Hi, Laura Jane. Welcome to the Vidal Speaks podcast. I'm so excited for you to teach some of our listeners about raw food and how to make that transition and all the delicious recipes that you know how to make. So thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me on Vidal Speaks. I am excited to be here and happy to just have an excuse to get to hang out with you for an hour.
Oh, that's so cool. You know, it's funny. Podcasting for me started maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And I was thinking today, you know what? I think Laura Jane's that podcast that I've listened to a long time ago. And I know you don't do like I do a weekly thing because I think your subject matter, like I was listening to your last one and you're like, haven't I covered everything yet? But then you always get these ideas, don't you, in this podcast? It's
yes.
great.
And I think you're slightly more organized than I am. You're keeping a good schedule where I'm a little more sporadic, but we all have our way.
Yeah, and it's difficult. It's hard. It's a lot of work. It's really a lot of work. But I so appreciate your podcast. I have listened to it in the past and all the work that you're doing and helping people to change their lives and their eating habits. And we'll talk more about your site and all that later. But before we get started, I want to know more about your journey. Like, where did you start from and how did you end up to being a raw foodie?
Well, such a big, wonderful, beautiful question. I feel that it's funny, you know, how life is. You don't expect it to take you where it does take you, but that's part of the fun. So right now I do a lot of raw food recipe development. So that's kind of what I love to do. I would like to focus on food and healthy eating and how to make that really simple. And this is kind of because I actually don't really enjoy spending a lot of time in the kitchen, although I that's sort of what my job is these days, but I really like to make things so simple. I would say I just started out in sort of a happy, hippie household where my mom was basically vegetarian and she really would always try to get me to eat lentil stew. And she'd be like, just chomping on lettuce. She was one of those people that always loved to eat healthily. And
Mm-hmm.
that was a contentious issue between us because unlike you, I know you sort of at a young age really gravitated towards wanting to be vegetarian and, not really liking heavy foods, but I still battle today. I love the more junkier something tastes and the fattier it is, the more I love it. So I
Be careful how much you tell me. I'll probably know what homeopathic remedy you need.
oh dear. Well, I would love to know. You let me know. But yeah, so it was always a contentious issue, and I would always sneak junk food into the house. I just didn't really enjoy eating healthy food. And so, like a lot of teenagers, I definitely had some skin issues on my face, and that was a problem that a lot of people have in my family, and that's just a common thing. And I was certainly, getting heavier and heavier as the years went by. But I just accepted that that was, how life was.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really have a desire to change anything. But probably in about 2008, I was definitely at my heaviest and just feeling like, you're moving around. I wasn't incredibly heavy, but I just felt sluggish and, um, I was kind of at that time, probably in my mid 20s, and thinking, okay, I see my future here every year, 5 or 10 pounds heavier, every year a little slower. And I kind of was looking for something. Um, and just right around that time, my mother in law at the time, was just for a short period really into raw food. And she happened to fly out to visit us. And she was eating raw food, which I had never heard of before. And she was really, really into it. And she was so excited about it and was saying, you can make things like chocolate brownies or chocolate truffles out of dates and healthy things, and they actually taste good. And I was a little bit like, this is an interesting idea, but I'd really never heard of it. But she came and stayed with us for a couple of weeks and just showed me some recipes. And it was right around that good time where I was searching for some kind of change. And so she introduced me to the idea of raw food, and just it was a perfect storm for me. I got really excited about it, especially because I didn't have any kitchen cooking skills myself, really. I was a vegetarian at that time, but I was a junk food vegetarian. So,
Yeah.
like pop, chips, and cookies, those are all vegetarian.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
that for me, that was around 2008, 2009. And I just got really interested in it, and it kind of opened up a whole new world for me. And that was just it. I started eating raw food right at that point for 30 days. I did a 30-day challenge just on my own. I wanted to eat raw for 30 days and see what would
Yeah, that's
happen.
a good start always because it tells you a lot.
Yeah, and so that just really completely changed my life. So that's how I got into it.
And it's neat because things come to you when you're ready, and that your in-law, coming with to your house and being raw, and you were searching. It's kind of that's how it always works in life. And you're so right that life never goes kind of as you plan it. And maybe for some people it does, but man, in my life, it's like exact opposite. If you write
Yes.
down like the 100 things you want to do in life, mine went the other way on all 100. So I've just learned that you're better off just learning how to accept and know that when you kind of let go, the door usually opens, and it's so much a better path than what you thought you wanted for yourself anyway. Don't you agree?
Totally. And I know quite a bit about your story. Just those things that we never plan, like an injury or a really bad health crisis, they change your life. They change your path. And for me, I haven't had anything thankfully, knock on wood, too traumatic happen to me in that way. But there's so many things, good and bad, I guess, that we don't plan for, and life just, the path moves, and you just have to go with it.
Yeah, and I think sometimes they actually put us on our path. We think we're on our path, but those kind of things actually are the incidences that put us on our path and help us do our life work and just become more wise and more able to let go and to forgive. And those are all such important lessons in life. So I agree totally with what you say. And I think a lot of people though were like you and they don't know how to cook today. Really, that's one of the things I'm so shocked about. And I'm to the point where I feel like we need cooking in grade school, not math, And I'm not against math. Math's very important, but it's so sad in my practice to see how many people would either just say, I don't have time to cook. And I'm like, you don't have time to cook? Then it's like saying that I'm okay getting cancer or something. That just doesn't make sense. You have to make time because what you're eating is killing you and you're feeding your body 3 times a day. But people don't learn the skills of cooking, and it needs to be done at a really young age. You can't like wait till you're 25, even though that's so young. If you can learn it when you're little, and cook with your mom and go to cooking classes and grow food at school and learn what a beet looks like and a carrot. Those kids are so proud to grow those things themselves that they learn to like them.
Absolutely. And I think so much of it is, it's not even about people don't know how to cook healthy food. It's that a lot of people are not used to making anything from scratch or preparing any meal that isn't really, really like pop it in the microwave or a frozen pizza in the oven. So I think just learning to dedicate a little bit of time to make something from scratch is something that many, many of us are not doing. And understandably too. I mean, the pace of life is quite crazy these days, but it's so important.
Yeah. And I think there's two scenarios here. There's the people, like you just said, that don't know how to cook. They pick up fast food, they pick up to go or all the time. They're popping in, probably their microwave. Ugh, I hate to even say that word. That's so scary, but they're heating up what we used to call TV dinners, but whatever, packaged foods, processed foods filled with fat, sugar, chemicals, and they're living off of these things. But then there's the people who actually know how to cook, but what they know how to cook is a diet that they don't want to eat anymore because they're learning from our podcast and other people saying, that cheese is unhealthy and you have to be careful with fats and oils are not great and you have to be careful and you don't want to eat meats and eggs and fish and all the reasons why. And then they go, geez, now I realize that my diet's not really good and maybe that's why I have my autoimmune disease or my skin problem or whatever it is. And they really want to begin to move over, but they're so lost because nothing they make is on that list of vegan or raw yet. And it's such an overwhelming thought for them that they don't make the first step because it just seems too big.
Oh my gosh, you have hit so many nails on the head there. I completely agree with this so much. And I think some people think about cooking. Well, let me take a step back. I would say cooking in any way is a skill that you have learned and been practicing your whole life. Even if cooking, I've used air quotes there, is just popping something in the oven or in the microwave. But however you're preparing your food, that's something you've been practicing 3 times a day, every day your whole life. If you're 40, that could be like 40,000 meals that you've cooked.
Yeah.
So you have to be gentle with yourself when you're learning a new way because you are a master at your old way of cooking, whatever that is. There's going to be a little bit of, a learning curve in changing the way you prepare your food. And I think you need to be gentle with yourself and also give yourself the time to learn a new skill. Just like if you're going to learn a musical instrument or something, you don't expect to be a master on the first day. But it's also important that you choose when you're making new recipes and trying to eat a different way that you start out with something that's going to be easy and give you a quick win, like a little recipe that's going to actually taste good and be easy to make, to dip your toes in the water of a new way of making food.
And you know what I found in my practice, what helped, and the hardest thing for me was because most patients were coming only for homeopathy, but I feel like when you're eating 3 meals a day and making your body sick by what you're putting in your mouth, Dr. Hahnemann used to say you have to remove the cause. So I need to speak to them about diet. And that's difficult because a lot of people are coming for homeopathy and they're not willing to change their diet, but I still would have the conversation with them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also difficult because there's so much out there about other kind of diets that support more what they might want to do, like the paleo diet, for instance. And they go, oh, but I'm following paleo. I can eat all the meat I want every meal. And I'm like, well, let me tell you a little bit about the research behind that and read this and just try to educate people because that's all you can do.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found that still would help at least those open enough to want to try would be to first have a conversation of what they can add to their diet and not what to take away, right?
Yes. Yes. Because I think that is putting the focus on where it needs to be. I like to suggest often when people are trying to make a change that let's take breakfast. Well, if you're used to having something that you love and you don't want to give up, why not just have a smoothie first or whatever the thing is, have a piece of fruit or something first. And if
Yep.
you still want that, whatever the waffles or the eggs or whatever you're doing after, well, that's okay. But just slip in something first and then reassess. So yeah, it's that saying, it's adding new things rather than saying you can't eat that or you can't eat this.
Right, because it scares people away. And dinner, if they're used to having a big hunk of meat and no veggie and maybe small salad, then turn it around. Make a small hunk of meat, a giant salad, and introduce one veggie and try it 7 different ways. See which way you like it. And at least they're still having the food that they want, not feeling like they're cut off from what they're craving or want or think they want,
Mm-hmm.
because very soon they'll decide that doesn't make them feel well and they don't crave it or want that. But I think that was one step that really helped me. And the other thing that helped me in my practice was because of this idea of people not knowing how to cook and they would feel very overwhelmed. So either I would say just buy one plant-based cookbook or one raw food cookbook and just pick out one recipe and make it and make it and taste it. And if you like it, then put that on a card or a list or bookmark that page. And then you have one. And the next week, you can just do your meatless Mondays and make it again on Monday. But after 1 or 2 weeks, pick another recipe and make another one. Because really, by the time you get 10, you have a lot of meals to make for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And that helped people. Although I say it's really hard to get the people open-minded to change when they're kind of coming not for that. When people are coming to me for nutritional and kind of advice on eating, it's much different. But those are still good tips for people who are wanting to change. Just keep adding more and learn different ways to cook. But it is really a problem, like you were saying. And people are just eating so much processed foods because we are busy. Moms have a job and then they have 3 kids and kids have homework and sports. Oh my gosh, I don't know how mom does it in today's world.
I
Really.
don't know either.
It's crazy. My mom had 5 of us and we were all 18 months except for my younger sister. And I still remember I was the 4th of the first 4. So I just remember like being schlepped around to my mom was taking me to my sports, my sister to painting, the other to piano, my brother to this, my sister to soccer. It's like, oh my God, moms are taxi drivers these days. But we still have to find a way to make it be one of the most important things in our life, to put good food into our mouths.
Yes.
It really has to happen because otherwise you are just feeding your family and yourself poisons and you will not get away with it. I mean, I know there's people that can say they smoked and lived to 90 and that ate crap all their life. But I honestly believe we won't do that anymore. Not with the world today.
No. An exception does not prove the rule.
And that's true too. That's really true. So, okay, you now are coming out with your first, is it a cookbook or is it also about raw food eating and the theory behind it and stuff like that?
It is. Definitely a cookbook. So there's a short, like 1 or 2 chapters at the beginning that talks a lot about just what you and I are talking about, really practical tips about nothing to do with nutrition, really, just how to make a change, the equipment that you need, more mindset stuff. And yeah, it's essentially a cookbook with like over 100 recipes and a lot of photography in it. So it's called Cook Lively. And it's funny. Just taking a step back, I think the whole idea of raw food, I think when people who aren't eating that way hear about it, they've heard amazing things and they think, oh, someday, like that would be a wonderful thing to do. Someday I should do that, but it's too extreme for me and I can't do that today because da, 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 da.
Yeah.
Because it does seem like it's a bit extreme and a bit overwhelming. You use that word,
Yeah.
and I would agree. And I think I had a really interesting experience developing this cookbook. So this is a normal cookbook. It's in chapters and it's available. But prior to that, I self-published a cookbook called Raw Food Favorites, and I tried to make it really easy. You just needed a blender and a food processor, and it was mostly my really simple recipes. And I had an interesting experience where I live in Canada on the East Coast and at that time was living on a small rural island, and I was in front of the health food store with my little table and my self-published cookbooks called Raw Food Favorites. And it was so interesting to see people come by and they'd come over and chat and look at my book. And these poor people coming to the health food store, so they were interested in health.
Yeah.
But they were so like, oh my gosh, raw food. I could never eat that way. It's too extreme. It's crazy. And I was kind of thinking that it's not. Like everybody's had a salad, everybody's had an apple. That's raw food. So the whole idea of maybe only ever eating 100% raw is a bit out there. But I think everybody, especially I love my desserts. I have a sweet tooth. I think everybody can use some raw food recipes in their life, and it doesn't have to be thought of as an extreme thing. And that was one thing that I did want to do with my current book that's out, is it isn't really branded as raw, and there's some cooked stuff in there so that it doesn't seem so overwhelming to people.
Well, that's good, because I think that is it is. You don't want to close the door on the people who want to be 80% raw, because that's great.
That's
80% raw in your diet,
amazing.
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
If you're 60 raw, that's great, because that means you're eating so many whole foods and healthy things, and that's fantastic. But sometimes if someone sees that the cookbook is just all raw, then, maybe they go, well, I'm never going to be all raw. And you
Yeah.
don't know. People, you shouldn't really say never, but we don't know. We think like that. And wow, I'm surprised, because I know you're in Nova Scotia. And one of the myths that I hear, and I kind of understand it, but I've always heard people say, well, wow, in the cold winters of New York or Canada, I just can't be raw because I'm craving my hot soups and my stews and stuff. And so maybe that's not a truth. And I'm sure there's lots of raw foodies that live in cold weather, right? But
Well,
and there's ways to slightly heat up raw foods that aren't always just cold.
definitely. I have to agree that it's certainly easier. If I was in Hawaii, not that I've ever been, but you're lying on the beach and just all you want to eat is like fresh, succulent fruits and vegetables. That's easy, but it's different when you've just come in on a cold day. So I would agree that being somewhere that's cold in the winter is certainly more difficult for a few reasons. I know for me, just accessing, mangoes and more interesting fresh fruits and vegetables
Uh-huh.
is more difficult in a smaller place. And I mean, we all want some warm food. That's true. But
Yeah.
but yeah, it doesn't have to be cold. And especially in my book as well, I like for people who are listening who don't know a lot about raw food. So it's basically you're eating fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. You're not really cooking anything, but sometimes you're using a blender or a food processor. And then there's also a dehydrator, which you can use to make things crispier. Like you can make crackers and veggie burgers and that kind of thing to remove some of the moisture to make it more tasty. But there's also a lot of ways to use the oven instead of that, because most people don't have a dehydrator. So
Yeah, but if they're obviously introducing more and more raw and really interested in it, it's a great investment. I've had my dehydrator for years. I still use it. Well, even just we sprout the nuts, so I soak them overnight or at least 8 hours, and then I rinse them, and then I put them on my dehydrator trays and I dehydrate them till they're crispy, which is about a day. Sometimes it's about 15 hours. Depends on which nuts, but I can tell you that we do that because nuts have that enzyme inhibitor built into them, and some people
Yes.
have stomach problems with them, and Lloyd's one of those people that needs the nuts soaked, and so that's why we do it. So I use mine all the time for that.
Yes.
But it's also great for like, dried fruit, and you can do like the burger patties or little balls so that they're kind of like falafels. And
Hmm.
I've been into that. You're the one that's going to tell us about all those. But so those three things that you said, the dehydrator, the food processor, and the blender, and you're talking about the super blenders like Vitamix or Blendtec, right?
Well, it's funny. I was listening to one of your recent episodes with John Kohler, who's the juice master guy.
Yeah.
And I was just, I feel like my general approach, and I love John, he's amazing. My general approach to equipment or eating raw or anything is usually extremely practical and just like, I want you, if you don't have a blender, it's okay to just go to a big box store and buy a $30 blender if that's all you can afford, because it's not going to be as good and smooth, but you can do it if that's where you're at. So I usually like for people to just begin
Where they
where
can.
they exactly. So of course, a $500 like a Vitamix or a Blendtec is going to be better than a $30 plastic blender. And by better, the result is simply going to be a lot silkier and less chunky. So it's going to taste better if you're making a smoothie or a sauce or trying to blend nuts. But
Mhm.
if that's not feasible, then I would rather you go and get a crappy blender than not get a blender at all or put
I
the
agree.
whole idea off, because like even me, when I began my 30-day challenge back in 2009, I had a very cheap blender that burnt out near the end of my 30 days. I think it was just from Walmart. It was very inexpensive, and that was the only piece of equipment I had at that. So I'm actually just going to take a moment here and say, so you use a blender to make really liquidy things like a soup or a sauce or a smoothie. And the reason you also want to have a food processor is to make drier recipes like brownies or a crust for a pie or something like that. So that's why you kind of need both of those things. Um, but generally, I don't particularly recommend any type of brand. I just want you to go and get one as soon as you can.
Yeah, and the food processor does a lot of things. If they didn't have a really expensive blender, sometimes you can get some of that done in the food processor. So I agree. People would told me when I got my Vitamix, you won't need your food processor. Oh, yes, you do.
Yes.
Yes, you do. I use it all the time. So that's cool. So those are kind of the three pieces of equipment that get them started. And if you can only afford the lesser blender, maybe in 3 years
Hmm.
you can get the other one, or you can find, you can find a used ones on Craigslist.
Yes.
Sometimes you can
Yeah.
find rebuilt ones for less money from the factory. So just look out there. Sometimes someone decides they were juicing and they bought this expensive juicer, and after 2 months they don't want to clean,
Hmm.
they give up on it, and you can buy a great juicer for a pretty inexpensive price compared to new. So always be on the lookout for good used stuff too.
Definitely.
So now tell me a little bit more about your cookbook. Is it all different? Is it in categories like breakfast, lunch, dinners, desserts, or?
Yes, it is in sort of those traditional categories. So that starts with smoothies and drinks. Not a huge focus on that, but there are some of my best recipes in there. And then there's breakfast, and then lunch and dinner, and a lot of desserts and also snacks as well. Because certainly I have an insane sweet tooth that goes back to my childhood of craving junky things. So I would say although the book covers all the categories quite nicely, I am kind of more passionate about my desserts. And I think one of the reasons I love talking about them is I know for so many people who have wanted to make a change into healthy eating, and they're starting from a place like I was, where of really not eating well at all. Usually, when they discover healthy desserts that are made from, dates and maybe some cashews and coconut and that kind of thing, their mind is open. That's what happened to me. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this doesn't have any flour, sugar, butter. It's vegan, all of these things, and it actually really tastes amazing. And that can be really the introduction for them into healthy and especially vegan and of course raw vegan. But I like to start with the desserts because I find that's the doorway into more eating more healthy stuff.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. Raw desserts are amazing, and it's amazing. And some of them the only sugar you might need is a date or dates, right?
Hmm.
And we have this homeopathic study group, and every time it was someone's birthday, I got in this little routine of just bringing a raw dessert, like a raw pie or a raw cake. Or raw cakes took a little more time, so it was often more like a raw cheesecake or a raw pie or something
Hmm.
like that. And all the all the members of my study group are like, "Oh my god. Oh my gosh, Deborah, this is so good." And they don't take very long to make, and they're
Hmm.
so delicious. And it's just, like I remember this one I made. It was cashews. It was kind of like a cheesecakey thing, but
Hmm.
I can't remember all the ingredients, but it was really tart because this is truly one that I didn't add any, even to the filling, I didn't even add any dates, but the crust, of course, was like dates and walnuts or a little bit of coconut oil or something like that.
Hmm.
And then I put this cashews and a lot of lemon juice. And I can't remember, there had to be another ingredient or something, maybe a little coconut oil in with the cashews to set
Yeah.
it.
Hmm.
And then, like I would put a whole thing of blueberries, and it's in this big fluted edge pie tin, the kind where the bottom lifts up so you can take it
Hmm.
out.
Hmm.
And you can take the strawberries and you cut them like the hearts and you put it all over. I mean, you do such beautiful photography, Laura Jane. It's amazing. So
Thank
people need
you.
to check out your website and I can't wait to see your cookbook, and because your photos are amazing. But yeah, and this is how you can win people over because the
Hmm.
desserts are incredible. And I think once they realize, like, wow, that's vegan, I could do this.
Hmm.
And it's true. From there, you get them over to the veggies, but first you got to get them there.
Well, you got to start with some honey before you stick them with the lemons. But
That's true.
but yes, and I think another thing too, going back to what we were talking about earlier, it being a new skill, a new way of making food without butter and flour and animal products and that kind of thing. I think when you start with a dessert as well, it's just getting you used to how to use your blender and your food processor or how to make a recipe without these other ingredients. So I think it's a really nice just way to start, and it's a way to start building your new cooking skills.
Yeah. Okay. So now you've put yourself on the line. I want to hear
Oh.
your all-time favorite dessert you make. And
Oh.
now that's tough. One dessert for a sweet tooth person.
Well, I guess I'll have to go with the tried and true, which is I have a raw brownie recipe that is definitely one of my oldies and goodies, and something that I almost always suggest, especially people that I even know in real life who are talking to me about how they want to make a change or how they're overwhelmed with raw food or they wouldn't think it would taste good. I have a very basic brownie recipe. So the idea is you're going to it's predominantly dates and walnuts and coconut and cocoa powder and some salt and a few other little things. But basically, all you do is you throw all of those things in your food processor, and just pulse that, and it kind of turns into a chocolatey, beautiful, mushy paste. And you just sort of plop that all into some sort of dish and squish it down with your hands and just pop that in the fridge. So it's a lot like a refrigerator cookie in traditional cooking. So because it doesn't need to be baked or anything, and this brownie recipe is just delicious and very easy to make and always turns out as well. So it's really hard to mess that one up. So I'd have to say that is one of my favorites because it always works out for people and they just love it. And there's also a good chocolate icing that's optional if you want to make it even better, but every brownie is better with chocolate icing. And so that one, you just use your blender because it's a more wet recipe. That's why we're using the blender for that one. And it just makes a delicious date-based chocolate icing.
That sounds really good. I know. And who doesn't like decadent chocolate desserts?
I don't know.
I don't think there are too many that wouldn't like that one.
Yeah.
What about your favorite salad dressing?
Ooh, that's a good one. Well, you might not like it, Vidal. It's a bit
Why?
It might be too creamy for you because you're so good.
No, you'd be surprised. I like some creamy stuff.
So I have a ranch dressing that is cashew-based, and the whole way you make that is you're just going to throw all your ingredients in a blender, blend it up, and it's done. It's ready immediately, so it's easy. But basically, that just tastes like your traditional creamy ranch dressing that you get, in life these days. And there's quite a few ingredients in that one, probably like 8 or 9. So things like lemon juice, apple cider vinegar. I think there's some dill spice in there. But it's predominantly cashew based, so it's super creamy and just ranchy. And that's a goodie. And it is great as a dip.
Me that one.
Okay, I will.
I'll try it and I'll give you my feedback. But I would like that because I'm in love with my LA cheese store, and that's creamy, amazing goodness. And he doesn't use any nutritional yeast or anything for the flavoring of cheese. It's all done. He like ferments it, and he has like 4 different kinds of big commercial blenders, and he makes bries and goat and everything. So there's certain things that are creamy that I love, like his cheese. So I'm sure I'll like that sounds really good. A dressing. Do you soak the cashews or do you not?
This is a very good question. So my overall, what's the word for this? Motto or life motto is to make my recipes as easy as possible and to eliminate as many steps as possible for people who are busy. And this is my long-winded way of saying, no, usually I do not soak any of my nuts and seeds unless I say in the recipe, hey guys, you got to soak it because.
Right.
But I completely understand the logic, and I know I totally agree with you. There are enzyme inhibitors on the outside of nuts and seeds it's better to remove them by soaking. And I think for me, I feel the same way about eating organic food. So it's like, it's better if you soak it. It's better if you eat all organic. But that choice is up to you. And I'm not going to say you can only eat organic or you must soak. So I think everybody can make their own decisions on that. But I tend to not soak because
it's faster.
Exactly.
Yeah. And same with not eating organic. I mean, some people can't afford it, and you're certainly going to still get a lot more from eating a non-organic broccoli than you will not eating broccoli.
Right. And I feel like everything that I do and everything that I sort of teach is coming from that place of helping people move probably from a really standard American diet where they might be eating really not healthily at all, and helping them move practically, realistically in a way that is not too overwhelming into a healthier way of eating.
Yeah, so maybe in the beginning they don't soak it because you don't want to overwhelm them, and they just try it like that. And if they don't have any problems with the enzyme inhibitors, then no big deal. They don't need to soak them. But if for those of you out there that say you can't eat nuts because they hurt your stomach, you should try soaking them and dehydrating them, or
totally.
You'll realize that you can eat nuts because that's the problem. All right, I know that you were just saying how to get people to transition over, and that's really a great subject to give people more information on. And I know you kind of say going raw is 3 different stages. So can we talk about those stages and tell me the details and the differences of each stage?
Good question. Well, okay, let me say this. I bet you can relate to this in your work as well. I get a lot of questions from people asking me about how they can go raw, and they want to go raw for 30 days and telling me maybe some stuff about their health challenges and why they want to go raw. And I'll kind of come back to them and say, well, have you ever made a raw recipe? And quite frequently, the answer to that is no. And so what I like to think of like as the first stage is like, let's get you to make one recipe. And if you don't have a food processor or a blender, there are recipes. I have a really nice, it's not in my book, I don't think, but sesame seed granola bar recipe that all you're doing is putting stuff together in a bowl and refrigerating it. So you don't need any equipment at all.
Is that on your blog or on your website?
Yes, it is on my website, but I mean, I have a number of them, but the idea is like the first phase is to make one recipe and then get that done and eat it, and then come to the second phase, which is maybe like getting up a few more recipes in your arsenal, just like you talked about, like making another recipe and seeing how that goes. So I tend to recommend that people not think of it as a whole event of like, I will go raw starting on January 1st, but rather like something you can do today to get started with it. So I remember I used to talk about 3 phases and I don't remember what they are.
Well,
help me out.
No, okay. So what was interesting when I was reading about that, because I'll tell you why that struck me. So the first stage you were saying, kind of like you said, like you're just going to like tell yourself, I'm going to eat raw. So you start eating salads and smoothies and fruit because it's kind of all you know. You can't think I'm going to make a raw meatloaf. It's too overwhelming.
Yes.
You just say, I'm going to go raw. So then you go raw, or you just try some raw stuff, and it's basically going to be the things that you've been eating raw all your life and never calling them raw. It's salads, nuts, seeds, smoothies, you know, and it's easy. And sometimes it's just like a 30-day challenge, or some people do it for 21 days, or some people say, I'm going to do it a week. But usually what happens is after that point, they begin to feel better. And then they go, you know what? I want to stick this out a little longer. You don't have to commit to be 100% raw, but I just want to do this like as long as I can, or maybe 3 more weeks. And and then they get to a point where, I don't know how long that is, but I think you get to a point where, okay, I'm kind of bored with my smoothie and salad and fruit. Now I want to do, so they start finding a raw food restaurant, and they have their kelp noodles, and they have things that taste like pizza and spaghetti sauce, and, you know, all kinds of dinners and soups. And they go, wow, this is raw. I could do this. So then they go buy, if you're like me, 7 raw cookbooks instead of 1. And then you go and you try to make your recipes. I remember when I did that, I did like we were doing a 30-day raw thing. I got this cookbook. I can't remember her name. It's the girl with the blonde hair that had the restaurants in New York.
Sarma?
Yeah, Sarma. So I think it was in her book, and I made this amazing, actually it was amazing. It was like a meatloaf, and I didn't even like meatloaf.
I love meatloaf.
When I had to eat it as a kid, but vegan meatloaf, I love.
Yes.
Raw meatloaf, I love, but it's just weird to call it that because it's like, ooh, meatloaf, gross, because I hated meat. But anyways, it was so delicious. I made my own barbecue sauce, but my God, Laura Jane, that meatloaf took me like 4 days to make. It was like, we polished that thing down in like 20 minutes. I'm like, oh my God. And then it's a lot of work to make those things. So what I learned in that time, because I think that was the second stage, where you go and you start preparing because you want to make like meals that you're used to, like the old meals, not just the salad, fruit, nuts, and season. I think I think it's kind of like the obsessive stage. At least that's how it was for me. And it was kind of like, I got to make spaghetti. I bought my spiralizer. I was doing all this stuff. It was a lot of work. And I think I read it on your site where you said, and you're so happy that you do that, even though you realize how much work it is and everything, because you got to go through that stage, because that's the stage that kind of teaches you about flavors and cooking and putting things together and what the possibilities are of being raw. And then the third stage is like, you know what? I don't need to be raw and do that all the time. I can have a raw meatloaf once a month or on an occasion, but I just I want my big salads. And you kind of almost revert back with a little better attitude about it, that you, because now you can add in some desserts and you can add in some soups, because you've learned so much from the second stage of what to make, but you go back to the simpler way of eating. Time to take your break and move a bit. You know how important it is to move and to do whatever exercise you can to make that body get a break from the constant stress of sitting as we do. I like my Cobra pose and, my Gary Crowley exercises with my tennis ball and that foam roller that I use all over my back and my body, the sides of my legs, on my IT bands for my knees. Those are my favorite. Well, actually, hiking's my favorite, but we need to just do something to get out of our sitting posture, and so that's why I do those other things. Okay, now please, just a reminder, please don't forget to share the show with your friends, family, or coworkers. You know someone that would like it, I'm sure. If you could share it with 2 or 3 people this week, I would be so elated. And I love you guys anyway, but I love you even more. My mission is to help millions of people learn how to take responsibility for their own health and to learn how to use things like homeopathy and other natural remedies, of course, along with a whole foods, plant-based diet to heal themselves. I so appreciate you guys sharing the show. So this week I'm asking if you'd please share it with 2 or 3 of your friends, coworkers, or family. And lastly, if you're not using that Amazon banner on my site for your Amazon shopping needs, then please go to my website and click on it, and it'll take you direct to Amazon. And just bookmark that page, and every time you need to go do a shop, you just click on that bookmark and it'll go through my account and I get a little credit for that. And also, would you take the time to review the show if you haven't already? I'd love you even more for that too. All right, you guys, thanks for helping me spread the word and get the word out to help me heal as many people as we can. I'm expecting that you guys are going to become the experts too, and I'm expecting you all to help a bunch of people. So it's a team effort, and just knowing that you guys are learning all this information, that makes me smile. Okay, let's get back to the show.
I totally agree. And I would think what I would add for that, at least in my experience, is I've sometimes thought, oh my gosh, I've made this meatloaf. It was delicious, but it was not worth the effort. For certain recipes, I know that there's certain things that are just not worth the effort, but then there are other recipes that are totally worth the effort, and maybe that's not that difficult. Like I have a really quick spaghetti sauce. My job is creating raw food recipes, but I spend very little time in the kitchen. But that's not because I don't care about it. It's just that I focus on recipes that I know are quick and delicious. So I have like a 5-minute spaghetti sauce recipe that's basically in the food processor. It's like tomatoes and some spices and some walnuts. There's a few other things, but it's very simple. And you pulse it, and it's like a really meaty, delicious tomatoey spaghetti sauce that the whole thing takes like 3 minutes, and then it's just ready to go. So I think what changes through those phases as well is you start to have these good recipes in your arsenal that you can just make really quick meals out of, and then you're kind of in a groove. But you're at the beginning, when you haven't made a lot of recipes, you just don't have those yet. So it is more time consuming at the beginning.
Right. But it's a lesson that you'll be so glad you did, because it teaches you how to learn to do stuff fast. But honestly, I think that's where your work is so great to help people, and why it's so loved, because you yourself don't like to cook and spend a lot of time in the kitchen. So you're looking for good flavor and fast. And I mean, how many people out there, that's what they need really, is good flavor and fast, because most people are complaining that they can't even cook a meal, even if they're vegan, paleo, whatever, because they have no time. So delicious and fast, you can't go wrong with that. That's cool, because that's what they need. And desserts they're fast. I know from making them myself, and it's a good way to reel people in, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I really love your work, because it's just so encouraging. Makes people feel like I could do that. 5-minute spaghetti sauce. Cool. I could do that. And what kind of noodles would you tell them to put it on if they're going to do it raw?
That's a good question. There are a few different options, as you mentioned. Some people will take a zucchini and spiralize it using one of those fancy spiralizers, or you can also just take a carrot peeler and just sort of peel your zucchini into thicker noodles if you don't have a spiralizer. So that is an option. Kelp noodles you mentioned as well, which are seaweedy noodles that don't taste like seaweed. But I have kind of not been eating those too much lately because I am quite budget conscious. So I don't eat those too frequently because I love them and then
Yeah.
I buy them and then they're gone. Another thing you can do too with that is I think in my book I just suggested because I didn't want to tell them they had to make noodles with that. So I think I said like you could serve that on crackers,
Mhm.
like or like on some vegetables that you slice up as crackers, or depending on what your food is, you could just put that on any noodles. You could put it on traditional pasta if you're not raw. It's wonderful to have, say, a raw sauce, and it's okay to put it on some normal noodles. I will still love you.
Oh, that's nice. We don't have to feel like we're going to get the three lashes.
No.
No, I think that's really the key with all of us. I'm a huge advocate of eating plant-based, and like you want to tell people really the more you can eat 100% that way, the better it is for you. But
Hmm.
if all you want to do is 50 and you were only doing 10, hey, let's celebrate. If you're doing 90, great. But still, the more you do, the better. And part of that is becoming more important to me. Of the part of that is becoming more important to me is because of all the impact on our environment and our animals from not eating that way. Now I'm feeling like it's a lot more irresponsible to just we can't sustain this kind of factory farm, and
Hmm.
it's torture on our animals. So every one of you that make one of these raw recipes, you can just say like you're doing your part, and that's a good feeling too that we're all doing our part to help out. It's really important to save our poor environment. It's really a big deal. So tell me about the raw food movement in Canada.
This is a good question. I don't know. I feel like I'm a little bit of an introvert, and everything that I do, I just like stay home in my little house and make my little recipes and put them on the internet. I would say certainly I know you're in California, or you're like in
Yeah.
Hollywood. So I would say it's way more popular there because it's warm and people are probably a lot more health conscious down there than maybe not to slag Canada. But
No, but I think in cold weather, you do see people eating more heavy, fatty, meaty stuff, and that's unfortunate but I do understand when people say, because I myself, even here in a cold winter's day here, I love to have a nice bowl of warm soup.
yeah.
So I do get that.
So we certainly do have a community here, and I'm currently living in Halifax, which is quite a hub, comparatively speaking, to where I used to live, which was on Prince Edward Island, which is a very small rural island. There was I was the raw food community there, as far as I know. But yeah, and I think now it does. I'm sure you're seeing this as well. Just like vegan in general is so much more popular than it ever was. We have a number of amazing vegan restaurants where I live. I'm sure you must have tons there.
Yeah,
How's and maybe one thing I'll add to it as well is I'm a sort of normal professional lady, and I feel like maybe the whole idea of the raw food movement back in the day was a little bit more maybe hippie-ish, but I feel like now it's sort of just become more mainstream. Not that hippie-ish is bad, but I would say the community generally, all of the vegetarian, vegan, all of that is seemingly less fringe and more just part of normal life.
for sure. Now it's not so weird to go into a restaurant and say, I'm a vegan. Can you make me some kind of plant-based meal? And they're much more willing to do that. And the movement is growing. Someone told me that on the Dr. Oz show. He said it's the fastest growing movement of 2017.
Wow.
So
That's amazing, really.
yeah,
For
yeah,
health and for animals and the environment and everything.
it's really great. I'm so happy when I heard that. And I know myself, I live in LA, and yes, we have lots of restaurants. We don't eat out that much. And because I try to eat at the places that are organic and do buy organic or farmers market kind of food. And it's expensive to eat out, and so we eat home mostly, but we have this restaurant called Crossroads Kitchen. Oh my God, it is just amazing. So that's our treat. Once in a while, we go out there. It's definitely a celebration and a beautiful meal, but it's fantastic. So we have this restaurant here. They do have raw things, but it's not raw. It's called Gracias Madres, and it's a Mexican restaurant that's all vegan.
Yummy.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. I'm sure you've made some good Mexican dishes raw.
I do a nice taco sort of thing, which okay, this is a way for me to segue into one of my like important points about I think any recipe in for any person. That spaghetti sauce recipe that I make, well, I can kind of tweak it a little and practically use it as the meat in quotes in tacos. So a lot of my recipes I find I like to repeat the same recipe and use it in a different way so that people are familiar with it and it's easy and so tacos with cashew sour cream is something.
And you do it in lettuce leaves or crackers?
Yes. Probably, yeah, lettuce leaves like a romaine lettuce. I haven't
Mm-hmm.
done those in a while. I think I do have a corn cracker, sort of corn chip recipe that I haven't made in a while because it's one of those that I'm like, that was a lot of work and
Yeah.
not worth my effort for that particular one. I don't know. What are some of your favorite recipes from that or like meals?
When you were just saying that about that, well, I love the little where you shred all the veggies up and then you dehydrate them. And they're like, you can make them in different sizes. So you can basically call it like a burger patty.
Yeah.
But if you make them in little balls, I used to do this pretty simple flax bread. I don't think it's raw because I think I warmed it in a pan to kind of cook it. But anyway, I used to make this little kind of like a tortilla because for a while I was looking for stuff that wasn't gluten free. And this was just like flax and water and some one other ingredient. And then I used to put these little balls, like these little veggie balls
Mm-hmm.
that I would do. And I just used what I had. If I had zucchini or carrots or mushrooms, or you just put them in and add a little bit of maybe some nuts and maybe even, I always put a little bit of flax or chia seed because you kind of want them to stick together
Yes.
so they don't fall apart. And then spices are everything. Like you said, you could make that taco meat taste like Mexican with spices, and you
Mhm.
could make it taste Italian with basil and oregano. So yeah, and I add different spices depending on what I want, and then shape them in a little ball or on a spoon if you want to be fancy.
Mhm.
Put them on your dehydrator tray. So I love those, and I made a kind of sour cream sauce like you were talking, but it was like tahini and some other things, and
Mhm.
I drizzle that on and cut up some tomatoes and shred a bunch of lettuce and make just like a big wrap. And I love doing that, and that wasn't hard. And it wasn't a ongoing dehydrate for 2 days kind
Yeah.
of recipe, you know? But there was one that I made, I really have to think what it is. It was something out of corn, and it was so good. I wanna say I don't know if it was like a raw corn chowder or something like that, but I haven't made it now for a while, so I need to go find that recipe now that you were talking about that, because that was one of my favorites, and I haven't done that in a long time. And I made that onion bread, and I don't know that that's a lot of work, but it's a lot more than what you're talking about, but
Mhm.
you can double the recipe and it lasts a long time. You cut it in squares and you put it in a Ziploc bag or freeze it, and that was really yummy because it was tons of slices of onion and coconut aminos and
Mm.
flax
Yeah,
and
onion bread is good. I've made that a lot too. I find with my dehydrator or if you do it things in the oven, the things that I do find are really worth the effort is I love having veggie burger patties. Just I love a good veggie burger and I so that's something I definitely make a lot and I also try to always have crackers in the freezer. So I make raw crackers, a huge batch of those. Just a really simple one of my favorite recipes and I always keep those in the freezer because they're just handy to be able to make a quick recipe out of those. I find I only really dehydrate savory things that I find is worth the effort, but I have so many different ways to make sweet recipes that I don't tend to spend the time dehydrating sweet things.
Yeah, and that's probably my hardest thing when I did raw. Just recently, we did like a 30-day, and it was basically salads, fruit, nuts, and seeds.
Mhm.
And I crave salt. So, like, for me, it's like, oh my God, what can I have? That's salty. Okay, cucumber with salt on it. Okay, another cucumber with salt and vinegar on it. I was just like, yeah, because after a while, I love fruit and I love salads. But there's something like after 2, 3 days, my body's going, salt,
Yes.
salt. So those onion crackers are good because the coconut aminos is very salty,
Mhm.
and the onions have that nice, tangy, sweet taste. And you can put so many different things on it. You can use it as a sandwich and slice things. You could put a veggie burger on it. You could put just plain old sour cream or vegan cheese or something. So they are really handy. That is worth the effort,
Mhm.
dehydrating those kinds of things. And like, what about kale chips?
That's so
Are
funny. I was just gonna ask you, how do you feel about kale chips?
I love kale chips.
Mhm.
I haven't spent I shouldn't say the time, but I haven't invested the energy to make them. But I kind of feel like I would know how to do it just with like some cashews, and some people put nutritional yeast, and I don't
Mhm.
know how you feel about that, but I love them, but I just haven't really done it.
I know the thing that's frustrating sometimes about when you're dehydrating something, because I love kale chips and I do make them on occasion. I have made them in my dehydrator and in my oven. And oh, it's just you know how it is in a dehydrator, things shrink. So it's like you have a whole dehydrator full of kale chips, and then they're kind of just progressively
I know
getting
you're done and
tinier.
you're like, "What? That was like one bite, all that, and they're done? I
I
need like
know.
7 batches of kale to satisfy myself." But the good news is you're getting all that nutrition from all that kale.
What
I'm not
about
sure if they're worth it. I don't know. They're
they?
expensive. So if you
Yeah.
do love kale chips, you should make them yourself. I'll tell you what I've done. They're not raw, but I love them. I just take the dinosaur kale that's more like the flat one, not the curly one, and I take out the little hard stem in the middle all the way, so I just cut it like a V and pull that stem out,
Mhm.
and then I take just this little bit of you can get one of those spray bottles or olive oil. I don't like to use too much oil, so I just take, like, a little spray bottle, and I put them on a big broiler tray,
Mhm.
and I just broil them, and then you gotta stay there and watch them because it doesn't take long. Like, maybe the first side might be 5 minutes, not even, then you flip them over. Oh my god, they're like potato chips, and I
Mm.
promise you, you can hate kale and you'll love these because
Yes.
when they're crunchy and cooked like that, they don't taste anything like kale, and they really taste, and then you can sprinkle a little salt or not. Of course, I do because I love salt. So I sprinkle a little Himalayan or sea salt, and I could eat the whole head of kale because, like, they're so light and so airy,
Mhm.
and Lloyd loves these, and he's never been a great vegetable lover, but he likes more and more, and he eats kale and kale salad now and stuff like that. But
Mhm.
still, they're really delicious, so people should try that one.
It's a lovely suggestion.
Okay, so I want to know about what you're doing on your site. First, before we get that, tell me what it was like to write a book. Is it a lot of work? And
Oh.
how long did it take you? How long you've been working on it? Did a publisher have to come to you? Did you do it yourself? I want to know how you did it.
Oh my gosh, good question. So I started my blog, The Rawtarian, in 2009, and I always knew that someday I dreamt of having a cookbook, but I didn't really try to actively get a cookbook deal for a number of years. So I just really wanted to focus on doing stuff on my website. But it did, at a certain point, maybe 2012, I started to think that I was ready to do a cookbook. And it took me about 3 years of actively pursuing. I got a book agent and he was great. And he was trying to get me a cookbook deal for like probably almost 3 years. So that process took a lot longer than I thought. I had a few deals that, like publishers, that we almost got there, but there were a few reasons why. Some of them were a little hesitant. They thought raw is a bit too small, and they didn't, or my photography wasn't quite up to par. So there was a few things that kind of fell through there.
Mm-hmm.
But I know you're an optimist, and I feel like I'm sort of a glass half full kind of person as well. I feel like it all came together at the perfect time because I really wasn't ready until the time that it came about. Um, so yeah, I completely did the whole book myself, including the photography. Um,
Wow.
because I'm not really a photographer. I used to back in 2009, when you look at a recipe on a website, the picture would be disgusting and you wouldn't really care back in the day, but now the standards are a lot higher for beautiful photos. So I've had to really
Mhm.
learn how to do that, and that has not been easy for me. But overall, it actually took a lot of energy. I worked on the book for probably about 10 months. Pretty much straight. There's about 100 photos that of different meals that I took, and because I'd never done it before, just like anything, um, I probably there's things if I ever did another one that I would do differently because I learned like, oh, you should probably make some recipes and put them in the freezer and then photograph them. Like I just learned how to streamline things better towards the end.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm a very creative person, and I tried to approach the whole project with the lightness. I can stray into a stressed out, sort of anxious person, but I had to really actively think this is such an amazing opportunity. I'm going to have fun with this. I'm not going to put too much pressure on myself, and I'm
Hmm.
just going to try to have fun and make this book. But
And when you wrote all the text, did you do it yourself or did you have someone help you with that?
Oh, the text, I could write a novel. Churning out text of I don't know how good it is, but I feel like that part is easy for me. It was the visual photography that was very hard for me. Um,
Uh-huh.
so I just kind of wrote it all, but it's not too huge. So there's like the book is large, but the written section is probably just like 2 chapters. So that
Uh-huh.
part was easy for me.
Well, it's cool because it's a lot different. I know I need to write a book and I've been told this for so many years, but I do everything backwards. Most people write a book, then they do a podcast. I do a podcast, and then I go, now when am I ever going to write a book? But it's a lot different writing a book on health and cookbook because cookbook is like trial and error. You really got to refine every recipe. You have to have good photography, and most people really love cookbooks that have good photography or at least photos because so many of
Mhm.
them don't, and it's really hard. So I think your photography is amazing. So
Thank you.
maybe your practice definitely paid off because your website's beautiful.
Thank
You do
you.
all that stuff yourself, your website, your blog, everything?
I have a business partner who used to be my spouse and is no longer, but we still work together, and that is really fun and works really well for both of us. So they're a programmer, like a web techie person, and I am just doing, what I do, recipes and podcasts and things, and that's a really great fit. And it just wouldn't have worked any other way. I needed that support of someone with tech skills, and of course, they needed me to be able to create fun, pretty recipes and things. So,
Yeah,
mhm.
perfect, perfect.
Hey, if you don't mind, I would love to hear like your book more about it.
Well, it's more just a lot about what I talk about on the show, but
Yes.
putting it all in one place. It's not like any hidden secrets, but I feel like I have so much life experience, and that's not bragging because
No.
sadly, I think you get experience from tragedy and hard times.
Yeah.
And so you learn from pain and from suffering and from loss and from all that. In my years of playing golf, I spent many years in Japan, and all the people that I hung around, because Japan is like 95% Buddhist. So I was around a lot of my friends that I had met there, and I learned a lot about kind of Buddhism and mental ideas. But mostly it's just like this idea of health, like just really trying to help people out of the trap of not being able to get well because they put too much responsibility into a doctor or a pill.
Hmm.
And mostly with the doctor, my father's a doctor. I'm so not against doctors. It's not often the doctor's fault. I mean, there's good doctors and bad doctors, there's good homeopaths and bad
Hmm.
homeopaths. It doesn't matter what their title is, but in general, in the United States at least, our healthcare model is failing, and people don't have time to go and spend enough time with the doctor. In addition, doctors don't have any nutritional or food knowledge to be able to tell people that changing the way they eat and live can make a difference in their disease. And as a matter of fact, they go to the point of telling them that it won't make a difference. And that's when I get angry. Say you don't know, no problem. But tell someone that going vegan when they have Crohn's disease isn't going to make a difference makes me now mad, because that's just not true. And there's plenty of research and books written on how many people healed themselves. So my idea is just to keep stressing and supporting people, kind of like healing. As a healing practitioner, my role has always been kind of just to walk beside my patient. I can't change them. I don't go home with them. What they put in their mouth, and of course the homeopathic remedy, that's not the easy part, because homeopathy is very difficult to find the right remedy. But it's the easy part in the sense that they just take it, their spoon of medicine, however I told them to take it, and that part's done. But that's not enough anymore. You got to be sleeping, you got to exercise. So to me, like health is like a pie, and there's so many slices of that pie that matter. And I think in my idea of a book, it can't be all of that in one, because it's too much. But I would like to do like a book very specific on detoxing and why we need to do that and make active effort now. And I speak about that a lot on my show, but it'd be nice to go in depth and to have that all in one place. And, maybe another one's about lifestyle and maybe emotional, mental health, maybe another thing about homeopathy. I don't know. So I see it more as kind of like pieces, because it can't just be all one big work or I'll never attempt it. It's too much, and it's too much information. I want always, it's like with when I teach golf students, I always tell them, you need two thoughts, because you usually have to think of something on your backswing and downswing, but we all really can only handle one. So I'm going to give you two, and that's one too many. So you're going to feel frustrated, and you're probably not going to be able to do them both every time you swing. But we still need to keep thinking about those two, because if we practice or perfect practice, then those two thoughts don't even become thoughts soon, because they're part of our feel. So I feel like that is the same with health. You can't give them so much information that they leave and they only remember, gosh, I don't remember that much, but I remember she said, don't eat meat. That's not what I want them to walk away with. I want them to remember the little important things. So my idea is to break it down into the subjects, like all the pieces of the pie that matter. And then, I can go more into depth in that. But it's just about lifestyle medicine, taking responsibility in your own hands, why you shouldn't be scared with a diagnosis, why we're put so much fear is put into us to do a certain treatment. And, the more knowledge you have, the more power you have. There's so much out on the internet that it's great and it's horrible, because you can put in homeopathy and you'll find that it's witchcraft, and you can put in homeopathy and you'll find hundreds of people that cured themselves. So how do you know what to believe if you're not the expert yourself? People give up and they say, forget it, I'll just do the chemo, because I'm reading that it's really dangerous to try alternative medicine or that it doesn't work. But you don't even know who wrote that. And so part of it is just to educate people. That's kind of my role, and the book would do the same. But I feel strongly that I need to do that. It's a time thing. Gosh, weekly podcasting, it's a big role. But I love it.
But I feel like you, just like what I was saying about my book and when it came together. And I think if you chose to do the podcast first, well, clearly you're a very gifted speaker and teacher verbally. And I feel like that is probably was where you needed to start. And that's a great way to get so many of your ideas, not only ideas, but like get your message out in a way that comes really easily to you. Another side of my interest is just sort of like personal development. And I was listening lately to a podcast with Brene Brown, who's a speaker who has a lot of books about in the self-help world, but she was talking about how she was kind of stuck and felt like she couldn't write her next book. And what she ended up doing was getting a couple of friends in the room for actually a couple of weeks and talking to them and about what she wanted to say. And of course, they recorded it all and then transcribed it all, because she felt like she couldn't sit in a chair and type it all, but she could teach it and talk about it, and then kind of she used that as the base. Like she got it all transcribed and then worked that, and then that was kind of the bulk of her manuscript. So maybe that's just the way you'll need to do it.
Right, exactly. And I know there's people that do that. They come and they interview you and they talk to you, and then they can help you. Because I'm definitely, as you said, communication is kind of my fun, my gift, my strength.
Mhm.
And even after I left the tour, I worked for the Golf Channel, and I loved it because I got to speak, and that's why I called it Vidal Speaks, because it gives me the open door to speak about whatever I want, and kind of on my own terms without rules, because I'm the freedom loving person. And and in the healthcare world, there's a lot of things that you wouldn't be allowed to say if it weren't your own show. So
Mhm.
it's why I do what I do, but writing is not my strength. I love to write when I write the way I speak, but that's not good for a book. You know what I mean? So I don't know the grammar side of writing and all that. I just know the message, and
Mhm.
and how to communicate it where people can understand it. That's kind of more my gift. So I definitely would need help in the writing of it.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
anyway, we'll see. One step at a time, right?
Well, this is amazing. Your podcast is amazing, and you're doing a lot. You're
Oh, thanks.
awesome.
It's so cool to know that you're all the way in Nova Scotia and you found my podcast. I just
Well, of
love that about this
course.
world, right? And I'm all the way here, and I found your podcast a long time ago. So it's cool. I go, wow, that's so fun. But anyway, congratulations on your new book. How can people get it? Is it available to order yet?
It is. It is coming out on May 30th of 2017, but you
Wow.
can pre-order it now, we're coming up really soon. So you can buy it in normal places like Amazon or Barnes and Noble chapters and that kind of thing. It's called Cook Lively.
Okay, and tell people now how they can follow you, like on your site. Give them your site and your social media stuff.
Sure. So pretty much everything I do is centered around the Rawtarian.com. And I use that as my handle on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all those wonderful things. But generally just come to the Rawtarian.com and you'll get lots of stuff. Or alternatively, you can go to cooklively.com and that will redirect you to where you can buy the book.
Okay, and I want to ask you about on your site. You offer a program, right? Is it like a 30-day challenge? Is it tell them what that is, because I think it's pretty cool that you offer something that really helps people step by step.
Thanks. Yeah. So I have something that's a membership called the Rawtarian's Kitchen. And what it basically is if you become a member, it's a paid membership. And once you become a member and you log in, it kind of opens up a lot more on the website. So you'll see more recipes and over 70 video tutorials. And I have courses in there and some recipe ebooks and meal plans and that kind of thing. So there's a lot there, but basically it's just, you don't have to choose anything. It's like either you become a member or not, which is either is fine. But yeah, it basically is mostly for people who are already eating raw food. So I would say if you haven't, let's going back, we're repeating our key lessons. If you haven't made a raw recipe yet, I just encourage you to just go and try one. Maybe those brownies, just type brownies in on my site and you'll get those, or any other thing that appeals to you, and start there. And you wouldn't really need a meal plan until you've sort of mastered a few things and really feel like you're ready to go whole hog, as they say.
Yeah. Okay. Here's a really important question. Do you have a super delicious, super fast Deborah craving lemon bar recipe?
Yes,
You do?
I do. But okay.
Where is it?
Do you like coconut?
Yes,
Okay.
love coconut.
Because it's a coconut lemon bar. So it's really good. It's just if you just type lemon bar, you'll find it. And I think I only have one. And
Okay.
the idea is it's just like coconut, lemons, dates, and you just food process it and then squish it in a pan and you're done. And you just refrigerate it so it solidifies. It's good. It's a good one.
And could you, if you wanted to make a little crust, put it on a crust?
Oh, you don't need a crust.
Ah, okay. I'm going to try it.
But
I love
you
that. That's
could.
even faster.
Yeah, no crust. You could. It would be
Okay.
better, but why make a crust? That's actually a
Okay.
good general tip sometimes for a lot of raw recipes is often you don't need a crust. So that's a way to speed up a recipe if you're trying to do something quickly. Yeah.
Cool. Very good. Okay, and lastly, what 3 tips can you leave people that are feeling overwhelmed right now about going vegan or raw? What can you tell them to do immediately?
I love this question. 3 tips. Okay. First tip right now. I need you to go to your fridge, and I'm sure you have something in there like a grape or a frozen strawberry maybe in your freezer. And I would say tip number 1 is boom, go take a nibble of one grape. And then you've eaten something raw today and you're already over your hurdle. So that's number 1.
Yay.
Number 2, I do know a lot of people who have never owned a food processor and are sort of like not into it. So I know when I was growing up, we didn't own one. So I would say my second tip is to truly think about buying a food processor because it will really open up a lot of opportunities to make different healthy recipes. Not even raw, just there's a lot of good things that you can do, good quick recipes. Like you can
And they're
make,
not that expensive.
no, I mean, they're not, I don't even know, like
I think you could, yeah, I'd say
$100. Yeah.
$100, right?
So that is a second tip. I don't normally say that, but that's something I've noticed lately with a lot of people. A lot of my friends, they eat healthily, and they sometimes even cook, but they don't own a food processor. And you can make, banana ice cream and a lot of great things. So that's my second tip is just to consider it. Third tip, if you're overwhelmed with raw, what can you do today? I think there is something you can make today in your house, and it could be like a salad or something that is maybe not even that exciting. So I would say my tip is if you want to have more raw food in your life, just don't think of it as an overwhelming huge thing. Think a salad is raw. So just start tiny. That's all I could come up with for number
Yeah,
3.
and you know what? A green smoothie is raw. A smoothie is
Yes,
raw. Just do a smoothie every day, right? Then at
totally.
least you're doing one meal every day raw if you just add a smoothie.
That is amazing. And I think generally too, if you repetition is something that I really advocate for people who are learning new things. Like you don't have to make a different smoothie every day. If you could make the same smoothie, because then you
Yeah.
get in a groove, you don't have to think about it. It's so easy. Keep making that smoothie until you're like, oh, I'm so sick of this smoothie. I need to make a different one. But that will make it so easy for you. And you just don't have to get a lot of ingredients in the house. And I would say spinach is the best green to use in your green smoothie. What do you think? What do you think for the best
I
green?
love spinach because people don't taste it as much, right? Kale, I put kale in mine. I put chard in mine sometimes, kind of whatever I have. I put cilantro in mine, depends what I'm doing. But spinach is a good one because you can give it to kids. They don't even know what's in there.
Totally agree.
It's so good. Laura Jane, I love it. It's fast, it's easy, it's delicious. What more can we ask for from you? Thank you so much.
Thank
That was
you.
that was really fun to have you today. And I'm sure the biggest thing that people are going to get out of this episode is they're going to go, wow, that's just not that hard. And I can't wait to go get on her site and make some dessert. Oh my God, I'm sitting here right now. There's this giant raccoon walking across my deck. He comes every day. We had to build cages around our vegetable garden because he gets in, but poor guy, he's so hungry. I'm going to go throw him a banana.
It's the perfect ending to a wonderful show about food and saving the animals. And look at you, you're feeding him a banana.
Oh, it's raw. He loves it. All right, Laura Jane, you have a great rest of the day. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Vidal.
That was a fun one. Laura Jane, she's fun, and she makes you just want to get up and go make her raw brownies, right? I got to try those lemon bars, though. I love so much how she works hard to make things simple, and when it's a recipe that's more involved, she asks herself, is it worth it? That's a good way to think of it because with raw food recipes, you sometimes have to plan 4 days ahead for soaking and dehydrating. But even without that, sometimes things are just a lot of work. And since she doesn't like to cook, and there's a lot of people out there like that, why not ask yourself if it's worth it? I also love that she even has recipes for people that don't have dehydrators or power blenders. She just wants everyone to begin to eat vegan and try her raw food recipes so they can see how easy it really can be. And who can't use this kind of advice? I'm so happy for her and all of us that she's finally come out with her first cookbook. I can't wait to get it because I bet that one will be one we all use. Who can't overuse a simple, fast, and delicious cookbook? That's something we all can handle. Raw food's so good for us, but so many people are overwhelmed at the idea of eating raw. But I love how she said, we all eat raw every day. If we eat a salad and a piece of fruit, we're already raw food eaters. So the first step is just to increase that amount. The amount of raw you can have in your diet can really be different from one person to the next. So you just need to experiment with it and see what you feel best on. Not everyone should be or can be 100% raw. Depends how you feel, where you live, and what state your health is in. But one thing for sure is if you can get to 50-50 or 70-30, you'll sure be feeling a lot better, I promise. Give it a try. Just see how you do. And what I love about it, even if you can't do all raw, at least you're doing all vegan. It's a win-win, you guys. I just think it's important to do it in baby steps because that just works best for most people. Well, you guys, that was a fun one today. Be sure to go to Amazon by using that Amazon banner on the vidalspeaks.com website or click on the link in the show notes to order Laura Jane's new cookbook and enjoy some simple, fast, delicious raw meals now, okay? I hope you enjoyed the show today. I know that you guys know what time it is. Yes, it's time to say goodbye. So until next week, eat well and do things to get well and feel your best. Okay, ta-ta for now. Vidal has spoken. Remember, you heal with a plant-powered diet, homeopathy, and detoxing, of course. Peace. Be healthy. Be free. Live life.